Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are calling in from. And welcome. Delighted to be with you today. My name is Steve Wexler, and saying hello, I'm going to stop my video and share my screen with you. And welcome to Using Data Visualization to Make Better Decisions Faster. Our subtitle for this might be 6 Things Every Business Person Should Know About Data Visualization. And some of you may already have a lot of experience. Some of you may be brand new to this. If you're brand new, hopefully this will be eye-opening, inspiring. If you've been doing this for a while, maybe there'll be some things you hadn't considered and things that will help you evangelize use of data visualization in your organization. Very briefly, I am the founder and principal and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Biz champion. That was a really long time ago. I am a Tableau Zen master in the Hall of Fame. That's an actual thing. I didn't make up that title. And I'm certainly proud of those 2 accomplishments, but the thing within the data visualization community I'm most proud of is being one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards, along with Andy Cotgreave and Jeff Schaefer. Note, important, I always state this in all of my workshops and presentations, you are encouraged to disagree with me. Now, there's not really a great forum here for having give and take, but if something I said doesn't resonate with you, or you disagree, or your experience is different, you can bring it up in Q&A, or please send me a note about it. All right, the 6 things. I'm going to start with number 1 and why just the numbers isn't good enough. There are a lot of people who don't buy into how charts and dashboards can help them see anything that they can't already see beyond their spreadsheets. They love, love, love their spreadsheets. Every organization I've been in, and I know you probably feel the same way, or some of you do, have people who cling to their spreadsheets. Maybe you're one of those people. You've just gotten so good at it. So I want to show you a composite of every client that I've had over the last 10 years who just is doubting that the efforts are worth it, or they tried it and it didn't really result in a change in behavior, better insight, maybe because it wasn't done particularly well. In any case, here is my somewhat reluctant client. You can have my spreadsheet when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. Well, how do we get this person to see that there's something the organization is really missing? Not just this one person or handful of people, but the whole organization. And I might start with something like this and say, hey, here's a typical spreadsheet. It's showing sales over a 12-month period. And I'll ask them, can you tell me in which of these 3 categories, consumer, corporate, or education, which had the highest sales and which had the lowest? And they'll say, well, come on, that's super easy. If you just put a total at the end of this thing, I can see corporate is the highest, followed by consumer, followed by education. And they're absolutely right. No reason not to use a spreadsheet. Well, there actually are. But suppose we want to dig in a little deeper and say, you're right, you can see that immediately, but in what months was it not the case that corporate was the highest? And did it go from first place to third place or just second place? And what about the other 2? Did they move around? Or did they just always stay in third place and second place? Realize, oh, this is a much harder question if you're just looking at the numbers. Well, if you display this as a line chart, it is super easy to see. Corporate is spending most of the time at the top, but whoa, there was a big dip in March. It only went to second place, but it's still way below. And consumer spent most of its time in second place, except here. And wait a second, what happened in March? And is that going to happen again this year? What can we do to prevent that? It's really hard to see those trends and dips in the spreadsheet, and it's ridiculously easy to see it in the line chart. Well, you still may have people who are skeptical about this. And I want to show you what I will use to win these people over, because they can still have all their beloved numbers. And I want to introduce you to the highlight table, or as I call it, the gateway drug to data visualization. By the way, it's called a highlight table in Tableau. It is called different things in different tools. For example, Excel will call it conditional text. Let's look at a typical spreadsheet. Look what I've got here. I've got 4 different regions along the top. I've got 17 different products subcategories. There are 68 different individual cells. Look at this and see if you can tell me which combination of region and product subcategory, which cell was the least profitable and which was the most profitable. Yeah, I can imagine you all kind of scanning the numbers and looking for this thing. You know, some of you may get it really quickly. Some of you, it may take 20 seconds. Some of you are going to get it wrong. Well, here's the answer very quickly. Tables in the east is the lowest, and office machines in the south is the highest. Well, instead of just giving you a bunch of numbers, suppose I had done this and done conditional text, or also known as a highlight table. Wow, it's super easy to see immediately worst, best, and a bunch of other things pop out. Tables overall is doing really poorly, except in the south. And binders and accessories is doing really well in all 4 regions. That's hard to see with just numbers. So this kind of wins people over because they still have their spreadsheet, but you're color coding them. Well, I want to take this a little bit further. Color coding is great, but it's not as good as some other stuff. So let's take another example. It's another highlight table. And what have we got here? I've got the day of the week along the top. I've got the hour of the day along the left side. And I can see there's like, you know, some pockets. There's a lot. That's a really dark orange over here and kind of a little dark orange over there. Well, what is this data? It happens to be the propensity of a certain politician who will remain nameless to tweet. It's the hour of the day and the day of the week that this person likes to tweet. Well, I can see where there are concentrated pockets, but suppose I want to know on what hour of the day does this person tweet the most? How about the least? On what day of the week do they tweet the most? Do they tweet the least? That's hard to see with this. So anytime there's a highlight table, I will encourage people to consider adding this to it. It's called a marginal histogram. It's just a bar chart showing the distribution, and it's called marginal because it's in the margins. And a bunch of things really pop out. It's super easy for me to answer the question, best day, worst day, or hour of the day where the most tweets, hour of the day when there are the least tweets. They immediately pop out. And if you're thinking, well, can't you just do that with a spreadsheet? You can, but it's pretty hard. It's hard to gauge the numbers. And if I end up color coding those numbers, I kind of lose the color coding for the bulk of things, but I'm missing something else as well. Anytime you have to rely on numbers to be able to figure out the magnitude of something, you are not, in fact, really taking advantage of what humans do well. And that is there's an innate ability to compare and do things. So watch what I mean. Let's just look at 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Okay? 11 a.m. looks to be about twice as big as 10 a.m., doesn't it? Well, you know that not because of the color coding, you know it because of the number that's in there. If I take the numbers out, can you really look at that and say, oh, 11 a.m. is twice as orange as 10 a.m.? No, you can see it's darker, but you can't quantify it that way. Now, here's the marginal histogram, and I'm just looking at the same period, 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. I'm going to remove the numbers. Can you see it's twice as big? Yes. So going back to the color coding, here's a great quote. We can say that one shade is darker than the other. That is obvious. But to say that it is 2 or 3 times as dark is not visible. It is not readable. Who said that? That was Charles Menard in 1861, creator of some very famous data visualizations, including a somewhat confrontational one that I'll discuss with you in a little bit. All right, next item. Why the F do we see so many bar charts? Okay, hopefully you're kind of buying into data visualization, can kind of make it easier to see some things. But why bar charts? Well, I'll ask this of workshop attendees or in presentations, who thinks bar charts are boring? And, people kind of raise their hand and go, well, it's kind of boring, because you see so many of them. And I will argue it's not the bar chart, it's your data that's boring. And in my head, I can't help hearing this wonderful comedian, Lewis Black. You should check out his website. He does have anger issues. In any case, let's kind of see why bar charts are so strong and why other charts maybe less so, at least for certain types of data. I've got 17 different items here at sales for them. And suppose I want to visualize this to help me understand where were the most sales, the least sales, etc. Well, if you let your tool do what it wants to do, and certainly in the case of Tableau, it'll create a bar chart and then you sort it, and there are a whole bunch of things you can answer really easily. What's the top one? What's the bottom one? What's third from the top? What's second from the bottom? How much bigger is this bar than that bar? But people think, well, that's boring. So if they start playing with the show me button, and they end up with something like this. And I'll grant you that is visually arresting. It will catch my eye, but it's not really useful. And if you try to make estimates and decisions based on those estimates, based on this data, you're going to have a hard time. Let me try to prove this to you. I want you to take this poll. Give it a try. What are the values of C and G? What do I mean by that? If this bar is 100, how big is this bar? And if this circle is 100, how big is this circle? And you can try this right now on your own. You can go to bit.ly/bars and circles, either all lowercase or capital B, capital A, capital C. Either will work. And I will give you a little bit of time to do that. Let's see how you do. Don't want to spend too long on this, because the whole point of it is you're not supposed to be overthinking this stuff. It's stuff you can see quickly. All right. Let's see how you did. Well, I'm not going to be able to see how you did, but let me show you how people have done. And this is based when we had 1,500 responses. We now have like 2,500. It hasn't changed very much, but look at the results. They're striking. Only 43% got this right at the time, and you're seeing a lot of guesses that are low and a lot of guesses that are too high. Look at the results for the bar versus the circle. 82% nailed it, and just a handful of people a little too low, a handful of people a little too high. And that's kind of the whole, point of this, is that, hey, you're good at comparing bars. You're not good at judging the size of circles. And this is a wonderful quote from Andy Kirk. What is data visualization? It's the representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. Translation, good data visualization takes advantage of what we do well versus playing into things that we do poorly. We're not great at circles. And I want to drive this home. I saw Professor Matthew Kay from Michigan showed this example that I had not considered, where two concentric circles, and he asked everybody, what percentage of the bigger circle is the smaller circle? And he said, look, you're all data visualization people and you're thinking about this. If you were to show it to others, what would they think? What would their guess be? And I've shown it to friends, and they've all pretty much to a T said the smaller circle is about 75% of the bigger circle. And that's not correct. The smaller circle is half. That is, when you're judging by area, the area of that is half the size of the bigger one. And that just blows people away. And then they come to the conclusion, well, I guess circles are bad. Bars good, circles bad. No, no, no. Circles can be really good. They're just not very good for accurate comparisons. And I'll show this map. And I'll ask people, hey, can you tell me what this is a map of? And then some wiseacre says, oh, it's a map of the United States. I go, yes, it's showing the 48 contiguous states. what am I trying to show you in this map? And I'll get a whole bunch of guesses. First one is, oh, you're showing population. Let me get that working here, there. Because people see the really big blob for California, and then shortly thereafter they see Oregon and Washington and go, oh, that can't be right. Then I'll say average rainfall, medium home prices, my favorite number of startups. These are great guesses. My favorite guess was recreational use of marijuana, in which case, well, Colorado will be a lot larger than what it is here. I then tell them, you know what? I have no idea what this is a chart of. I made it 7 years ago. I forgot to put a title on the top, but whatever it's about, I know way more of it is happening on the West Coast in California, Oregon, and Washington, and than is in other parts. And if I need to make an accurate comparison, maybe I pair this up on a dashboard with a bar chart, or I do some drilling down to do comparisons. All right. Getting back to that first question, why the F do we see so many bar charts? I want to show you a fun little vignette. It's from a movie. And you know, as a data visualization person, I end up watching movies differently than other people because I'll see something and go, oh, well, wait a second. That's a great opportunity to use data visualization. So here's a made-for-Netflix movie called Dolomite Is My Name, starring Eddie Murphy. He plays Rudy Ray Moore, who was a struggling R&B singer, then did comedy albums, touring the country, and decided, you know, I want to make my own movie. And he couldn't get anybody to produce it. So here's the setup. Rudy Ray Moore decides he's going to finance his own movie using advance royalties from his record company. And they say, if this doesn't work out, you're going to be in debt to us for the rest of your life. He makes the movie, but no studio will distribute it. Kind of throwing what is called a Hail Mary pass in football. Moore rents a movie theater for a single late night show. The show sells out, but there's still no distributor. Cut to next scene. We see the office of a sleazy movie producer, someone who had first turned down making the movie, and he picks up Variety magazine, which is a trade magazine with statistics and records and TV shows. And he starts looking through a table full of numbers, meticulously looking through it, and he sees a number that astounds him, sees what movie is responsible for that number, looks up and exclaims, what the F-ity F? Well, let's see what he saw. And it went by quickly, so I tried to come up with a composite of it. He saw this table full of numbers. Can you see anything astounding in this table full of numbers? You know, particularly the last column. Well, if instead this thing had been a bar chart, something just pops out. And if that weren't enough, maybe you have an intelligent system that color codes anything that's greater than 70% or something like that. This is practically hitting you over the head. The only way I could make it more obvious that this is noteworthy is maybe do something like this. Well, realize, had there been a bar chart, there would have been a bunch of movie studio executives in a bidding war to have the rights to this movie. So Rudy Ray Moore would have made even more money. So why do we use bar charts and data visualization in general? Well, because it kind of gets us to what the F-ity F so much faster. By the way, it doesn't have to be a bar chart, even though they're very popular. The key thing that people are really good at is judging either length or position from a common baseline. You know, I can see really easily that this bar up here, let me change that, Rio de Janeiro is about twice as big as Kingston. But I can also do a dot plot, and I can see this dot is twice as far as this other dot, or kind of a hybrid, which is called the lollipop chart, which is one of my favorites. All right, next item to be aware of, the use and abuse of color. And this is where my co-authors, I think, and I see eye to eye. I think the #1 infraction is the misuse of color. And Jeff Schaefer put together this wonderful chart. It's page 15 of the Big Book of Dashboards. And he might argue that this is everything you need to know about color in data visualization: sequential, diverging, categorical, highlight, and alert. I gotta tell you, I agree. You understand these 5 things and how they work, that's kind of everything there is. I'm not saying that there isn't an art and science to using a great color palette, but just understanding these concepts that are there. So I recognize I am oversimplifying, saying this is everything you need to know about color and data visualization, kind of like saying this is everything you need to know to compose music. But getting back to this, I don't have enough time to spend going through all these things, but I want to get to the one where people really misuse: categorical color. Oh, we have 11 different product categories. Let's have 11 different colors on our dashboard. And I try to drive home the purposeful use of color. And I'll do this in a workshop or a presentation. I've done this one time with 1,000 people in a room. And I did a pop quiz. What do you conclude from the following chart? I asked half the people in the room to close their eyes, the other half have it open. And to the people who have it open, I say, I'm going to show you a chart for 5 seconds. I want you to see if you come to a conclusion. Let's see how you do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. I now switch things up. People had their eyes open, close them, and vice versa. I now show the other group this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'll ask the first group, what conclusion did you reach? Hoping someone will say rentals on the weekends were fewer rentals on the weekend than on weekdays. And I'll ask, how many people in the first group saw that? And lots of hands go up. I'll ask people in the second group, how many people saw that? Very few hands go up. So what's the conclusion? Is it that the first group is more intelligent than the second group? No. I then show both groups what they each saw. And look at this. On the left, color, I can't help but notice color. It's what is called a preattentive attribute. That's a fancy term for things you notice without even noticing you noticed it. It's something your mind processes without attending to it. It processes practically instantly. You can't help but see, oh, a bunch of stuff is muted and look at that stuff in blue. Saturday and Sunday. On the right, the preattentive attribute of color, it's too much for us to process. We realize pretty quickly color is not helping us at all. Color is not doing anything to help us decode this. We have to ignore color to try to find a conclusion in this data set. So that's an example of really purposeful use of color. By the way, if that's not enough, if this is going to end up in a presentation, maybe you really curate the results and hit somebody over the head and say, this is what I'm trying to show you. Another item that has flummoxed me, and my key to fixing it is engagement through personalization. I've probably created more dashboards that people don't use than anybody I know. And it doesn't mean I haven't created dashboards people don't use. They certainly do, but I would be really frustrated. Wait a minute, I just really worked hard. I've got this great team. Why aren't people using these things? And for whatever reason, they didn't see it as being useful or helpful. It wasn't that it wasn't sexy or cool looking. And I realized the key to getting them involved was to somehow insert the individual into the dashboard. Make it about the person. Make it about the audience. And I thought about this guy. This is Mayor Ed Koch, New York. Deceased, but he was the mayor of New York from 1977 to 1989, and he had a famous catchphrase, how am I doing? And if you can answer those questions, how am I doing? For the individual, such as how much older, younger am I than others? How is the store I manage performing compared with all others? How did my session do? What is my salary compared to other people? How is our segment compared to our competitors' segments? People will make a beeline to what you're doing. Let me make a case in point. This is a dashboard, it's not a dashboard, excuse me, it's a histogram showing the age distribution of people in the US as of, I think, 2014. That is, there are just under 4 million people that are newborns. We have like 4.6 million who are about 21. A lot of people who are about 54, 55. And then, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But I'll show this to friends, and they're not so interested in it. They kind of give me a this. I think it's fascinating because I want to know why there's this cliff, between 65 and 66. And it's almost certainly because that's the cusp of the baby boom generation. If you think of this as being from 2014 data, that year of the people who are 65, 66 years old will be 1946. Great. I find it interesting, but who cares about me? It's about my audience. But if you make something like this, an interactive dashboard, and I got inspired to do this by a colleague, Chad Skelton, where you show people this and say, hey, you can put your age in by moving the slider and see how much older or younger you are than others. No one I've shown this to doesn't want to try it, doesn't want to see how much older or younger they are. By the way, this is on my website. You can try it. If you're over 50, it is depressing, but you're going to do it. You're going to do it for yourself. You're going to do it for your kids, your parent, your partner, whatever. You're going to interact with it because I made it about you or a family member. Well, let me show how potent that can be, especially with disaggregated data. Let's say there's a salary comparison system that you've got. You can look up your salary compared to peers. And how would you feel doing that with this? That orange dot is you. You type in your ID number and you can see your salary compared to the average of everybody else. And you're thinking, well, wait a second, I make $82,000. That's really good. Well, the average of everybody else is a little over, maybe 114. Maybe you start arguing with saying, well, I haven't been with the company as long, I'm not as experienced. Let me show you exactly the same data in disaggregated format. Whoa, wait a second, that dot's really low. What's going on here? Oh, there's the upper quartile, there's the median, there's the lower quartile. You are in the lower quartile. That's you. It's exactly the same data, but here you have the average of everybody, and that could be really obscure, fascinating things. So if you have disaggregated data and showing somebody their place compared with it, it can be very powerful. How is the store I manage doing compared to all other stores? Oh, I'm the big dot. There are all the other dots. And I can see where I'm doing really well and really poorly and the median. Great example from Curtis Harris. He had reams of Freddie Mac data on housing in the United States and said, well, how can I make this really useful to the individual? And said, oh, I'll allow people to select when they bought their home, where they bought their home, and how much they paid for it. You know what each of these lines are? It's housing prices for 50 different states, but it's just highlighting the state that is about the audience member. So you could type in, if you own a home, hey, I live in Florida, I live in New York, I bought it this year, a certain year I paid this much for it. And this data is now all about you. Last item and why I'm so high, particularly on the jitter plot. I was working with a major healthcare concern, and they had lots of great data on thousands of companies. And they realized if they could get people to be more compliant, both with their medication and nutrition, everyone would win. Healthcare costs would go down, people would not be hospitalized, they wouldn't get sick, premiums would go down, everyone would win. There was no losers in this. And they created a slide like this for this particular organization. Incidence of diabetes, your organization is 18.5%. That's of employees as well as their family members. But the average of all other organizations like yours, 4.9%. And it just didn't have an impact. What does that mean, 4.9 points, 18.5? And then we show them this. Each dot is a separate company. There are 790 dots. The dots down here, okay, those are organizations where the incidence of diabetes is really low. And the ones up here is really high. You do not want to be here. You're up here, you are the bottom 1% of all companies. You want to be down here. We then showed them, and here's your organization. And it had a powerful impact. They could really see that they were doing so poorly compared to others, and that they were an unenviable outlier. And it just changed the way they thought about the data. And they were determined to change behavior in the organization. All right, last item. What you should always keep in mind. And I'm going to start by showing you a very famous chart by Charles Menard. I don't know anyone who, if you just show them this chart, can decode it. But it is an attempt to show Napoleon's failed campaign to conquer Russia and conquer Moscow between 1812 and 1813. By the way, if you take this, it fits conveniently, almost perfectly on a map. He started in Lithuania, went east. Edward Tufte, who wrote the seminal work, The Visual Display of Quantitative Data, has argued this may be the greatest statistical graph ever done. More on that in a moment. By the way, this is the same person who said just looking at color and saying that's 2 or 3 times more than the other thing, looking at color, it can't be done. He had a lot of brilliant insights on data visualization. Well, let's try to understand this graph. Look, it's a famous chart. You should know about it. I just don't know if you should try to make something like this for your organization. And here's a version of this. It's available on Wikipedia, where everything has been translated into English. If you're saying, hey, wait, what happened here? Everything, that funny looking shape was beige and now it's red. A number of people have argued that, in fact, it was red ink and it faded. Well, let me explain how to read it. Starting in Lithuania, I'll zoom in on this. The thicknesses of the bar is how many troops Napoleon had. And he started with 422,000 troops. Most of them went east. Some of them went north at this point early in the campaign, reach Vilnius, and a bunch of them go north and end up at Polotsk, where they hang out for a while. Notice that the bar is getting thinner and thinner as we're moving forward. And we're even seeing numbers that indicate the number of troops. People are dying, starvation, they're in battle, scorched earth policy by the Russians to get rid of, burn fields and burn food sources. Eventually, Napoleon and troops get to Moscow. The Russians, rather than being conquered, burn the city, refuse to capitulate, refuse to sign peace treaty, or capitulate, and not a peace treaty, but just say, we give up. And Napoleon has no choice but to retreat. And so the black line is the retreat. By the way, it's over the same path. It's not, in fact, south. What's down here? This is the temperature outside during the retreat, and it is ridiculously cold. It was originally done in just the Rameau scale. I had never even heard of the Rameau scale. It goes from 0 to 0 is freezing, 80 is boiling, but we have it in centigrade and Fahrenheit, and it gets as low as minus 36 degrees Fahrenheit during this trip back. Okay, well, what's happening? Well, if you're wondering, why does the line get thicker over here? It's troops from Polotsk actually join the battle. That's why it's thicker. In any case, after all this is said and done, when everyone has returned to the starting point, Napoleon started with 422,000 troops, and he ends up with 10,000. Is this the best statistical graph ever done? Well, what does Seth Godin, best-selling author, marketing guru, have to say on Menard's graph? This is one of the worst graphs ever made. Tufte is very happy with it because it shows 5 different pieces of information on 3 axes, and if you study it for 15 minutes, it really is worth 1,000 words. I don't think that's what graphs are for. I think they try to make a point in 2 seconds for people who are too lazy to read the 40 words underneath. By the way, I can't help thinking if Menard were alive today, he would probably do different techniques. You've got to remember, he was creating these charts at the end of his life. I think he was 89, 88, 89 years old. He was trying to show the futility and the massive suffering of war. So many people died, and to no good end. back where they started. Would he be doing something like that now? And at the time, the assumption was if people are reading my charts, they have a ruler. And they're comparing, they take the ruler and they put it on the size legend, and then they bring it to the chart itself and be able to measure these things. Well, how might you redo this? And so you may have heard of wonderful social media initiative called Makeover Monday. The idea is someone takes a famous chart in the data set and re-renders it. And I saw something a number of years ago where data visualization guru Jorge Camoes, best known for his incredible Excel work, decided to take exactly the same data set. Well, how would I show this now using modern tools? And came up with this. Granted, tongue-in-cheek, but there is something to be said for this. It gets the point across very quickly. If your executive or your audience only has a short time to be able to review these things versus that other thing, which is going to take 10, 15 minutes, maybe this is a better way to show it. And there are yet other ways. But thinking about your audience and what they need, I cannot stress the importance of that enough. I wish I knew more about the people who are attending right now. But a friend of mine encouraged me to read this book before writing the big book of dashboards. This is supposed to be the key takeaway of the book. People don't want to be badass at using your tool. They want to be badass at they want to be badass at what using your tool allows them to do. That wasn't the takeaway I got from this book. Often the case when I read books, it's something else hit me. And that was, how is what I am doing going to help my audience? And it informs everything I do. I think, what is it that they want to see? What is it they want to know? And am I going to give them something that they're going to apply and use in their own business? By the way, that's my problem with the Menard chart. It's a brilliant piece of work, but I see people trying to take that and go, how are we going to do this, when we get back, back to our desks? And the answer is, you're probably not going to make a chart like that. So just thinking about what people look for, what they need, what they're asking, it informs everything I do. Look at this typical agenda slide. Okay, how many times have you seen stuff like this? This drives me nuts when I go to take a seminar. Why? Because I'm scanning for something, and I know, what is everybody actually looking for? And they're looking for this. So, overarching thing that now informs everything I do, and I mention that to any of my workshop attendees. Always think about, who is your audience, what's the message, and it's taken me 14 years in data visualization to distill everything I do down to a single sentence. Provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And data visualization can do that way better than just a bunch of spreadsheets, but it's good data visualization, not gratuitous packed bubbles. And by the way, when I say the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort, the least amount of effort is for your audience. You may have to work really hard. Getting people to see something and go, now I get it, finding the right visualization the right way, that can take some effort. Would love to continue the discussion and give you some additional resources on this. This is my website, datarevelations.com. There's also bigbookofdashboards.com. Lots of free content that is there, as well as information about other things, about workshops that you can take. But for more things, free downloads and things like that, hope you'll visit datarevelations.com. And ready to move to the Q&A. I can leave this up there for now, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Hey folks, so I'm going to do reverse order, meaning I'm going to take the oldest questions, and Daniel can't take everybody's question. Daniel had asked, do I have any tips for designing? And sorry, hold on a sec. Here we go. Do you have any tips for designing a visualization with the expected decision in mind? How can you use visualization to better highlight trade-offs that need to be balanced in decision-making? Daniel, I see kind of it being a two-part process. The first is interrogating the data and finding something really noteworthy within it. And maybe you have some ideas of what you're looking for, but part of one of the things I love about Tableau is discovering stuff that maybe people didn't suspect. Then it's, I found something really noteworthy. How do I get other people to react to this the way I hope they will? What's going to be the way of showing it that will have the biggest impact? Kind of goes back to the diabetes example, which was, hey, I found something interesting, but a couple attempts to show it really didn't resonate, and then the here's you, here's everybody else did. So the using a dashboard to find something important and then what you're going to do with that, it really depends. Depends on, are you going to make a PowerPoint presentation? Is it going to be a story point? Is it going to be a Word document? I don't think there's any better tool out there than a dashboard to help you find stuff. And hopefully you found that helpful. Let me move to the next. Danielle Grebe asked, what was the name of the hybrid chart again? I think the one that you're asking about was the highlight table with a marginal histogram. Histogram is just a bar chart with thick bars to show the distribution of things, and it's called marginal because it goes along the bottom and the side in the margins. And they work great with highlight tables. They work great with scatter plots, and there are a lot of how-to articles on how to put them together. I think I've got a couple on my website. If you go to Data Revelations and type histogram, you should find what you're looking for. So I hope that will be helpful for you. Let's see. Eric asked, how do you balance the pressure of creating dynamic-looking presentations with the reality of needing to present data in easy-to-understand formats like bar charts? Gosh, I have a whole spiel I do on this. You know, this notion of, oh, I have to really glam this thing up. And often you end up hurting the analytic integrity. The best among us can do both. They can make stuff that looks gorgeous, and it is spot-on analytic integrity. My secret to this is I try to insert the audience into the data visualization. I'm going to make the data visualization about them. They're going to see some reflection of themselves. How much the salary that they make, the company that they run, the department that they run, whatever it is, and comparing with others. And they're going to be fascinated by this. They're going to come back again and again to see how they're performing, and because you've created something that is helpful to them, that's important to them. That said, there are some substitutes to the quote-unquote boring bar chart. It can be a dot plot, or one of my favorites is something called a lollipop chart. Let's see if I can take this. Jenny asked, there was a suggestion for adding a bar chart for totals to a highlight table. I like that and would like to use my current project. Can you show how that's done? Yes, that's the marginal histogram. You can either go to Data Revelations and type marginal histogram, or you can just do a Google or any search engine search, type Tableau, marginal histogram. It doesn't come automatically, but it's certainly not difficult to create them. Shalou asks, you compared bar chart with bubble chart, where you suggest the bubble chart. Where do I suggest the bubble chart should be best used? And maybe never. I can think of some exceptions, and there's always an exception. One would be, if I don't need to make an accurate comparison and I just want to have make a really emotional comparison. So maybe I have one giant bubble and lots of really tiny ones to make a point, or lots of giant ones and one really tiny one. I've made the point. Do I need to do the exact comparison? You know, maybe it could be how many died and how many survived, and you have this giant bubble for the number of troops that died in Napoleon's failed attempt to conquer Moscow. That's about the only time I might consider doing that. Catherine, you've got a good question here. Can pie charts, bubble charts, etc. be effective if you add the data points within the visualization to compensate for our inability to judge the value of an area? Then I think we're kind of failing if we have to put numbers in. I'm not saying don't, but that's one of my tests. Can somebody understand it and get it without the numbers and without a legend, a color legend or a size legend? So, by the way, pie charts have their use. Pie chart. One pie chart with 2-3 segments, nothing is better than doing a part to the whole relationship. Oh, I can see that's 1/3. I can see that's just less than half. I can see that's just under 3/4. A lot of slices to a pie doesn't work. So if you have to put the numbers in, you can probably do better, would be my recommendation. Okay, let me go to the next set here. This one comes from Augustine, another question about the marginal histogram, and I've answered it. Let's see. Shalini has a good question. By the way, I'm sorry, there are lots of good questions. I just can't take them all. If the data is changing on a day-to-day basis, meaning we have dashboards pointing to a live database where data is changing every day, how can we write a summary on the chart? Not easily. That part of the summaries that go into it is you're curating the results. Now, there are things that will help with this. Tableau is explain the mark, explain the data. We'll attempt to answer these things, but something that will automatically say, whoa, look, this bar went really high today. It was really low yesterday. Well, part of the joy of a good dashboard is it flagging that for you immediately. Or maybe you have alerts to let you know about these things, and that maybe that change, the dot that's next to it, a bar that suddenly turns red, is more than enough. Ruzba, I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation correct, is asking on the incidence of diabetes in the organization, would it be helpful to combine it with the average age of the employees in those organizations? Always wary about average age. I'd probably want to see disaggregated data there. Sure, it may be that your organization has a lot of at-risk people, older people, though the comparison was among similar organizations. Zili asks, can I find a sample workbook of the salary and bar versus quartiles in your Tableau public profile? Yes, there's a ton of them there. These disaggregated data, I've got a whole bunch of blog posts on is a jitter plot better, is a unit histogram, also called the Wilkinson dot plot, a better way to do it. How do I show how these things are clustering? But that the power of here's your dot and everybody else. So you're more likely to find how-to and commentary at datarevelations.com, but you'll find a bunch of examples on my Tableau public profile. Okay, let me go to next set of questions. So Amy is asking, if I'm curious to know my preference on digital tools versus print or static tools. Boy, it depends. I'm a huge believer in interactivity and allowing people to explore things. I want to hover over that dot. I just want to highlight this line versus that line. But when I'm learning about these things, I actually want it in print. So I'm in the midst of writing another book, and in my head I've written the chapter that says the irony, and there's going to be a whole chapter about the importance of dashboards and interactivity, and the irony of hoping that people are actually reading that, what I'm telling them in a printed book, is not lost on me. That some things are better in print, and some of these things that someone wants to answer a question that the printed thing didn't, I really relish the interactivity. Tyrone Preet has asked, what are the best resources for learning the science of building dashboards? This is somewhat self-serving answer here because I wrote a book with two of my esteemed colleagues, Jeff Schaefer and Andy Cotgreave, called The Big Book of Dashboards. But also, I know Tableau has recordings on this. There's a whole series of dashboards and design, a lot of free content that you can get on the approach to doing this. So you can probably do a search on Tableau's website, and there's a lot of stuff at datarevelations.com as well. Let's see. Oh, Bailey is asking a question. Thoughts on stacked column or bar charts? Could these become color overload? Would you recommend not using stacked bar chart versions? I've just written about this ad nauseum for the book, and I have a web post about this, this is where interactivity works really well. A stacked bar chart only can tell you two things. It can tell you the stuff that's at the bottom of the stack, because you can compare them, and the overall. Anything in the middle of the stack or at the end, you can't read. So having that ability to decide what goes to the bottom and do the comparisons, that is a huge argument for interactivity. Well, the book's not coming out till next year, but the blog post is available now. So I think it's called How to Take the Screaming Cats Out of Stacked Bar Charts. Alfonso has a great question, and you're going to be annoyed at my answer. What is the rule of thumb for number of sheets, graphs per dashboard? Not too few and not too many. I'm sorry to be evasive with that, because I've seen people put like 30 things into a dashboard, and they'll use Gestalt theory and there's another term that I will remember the minute this webinar ends. Uniform connectedness. That will, instead of seeing 30 things, you'll see like 3 or 4 things, because the way the things are intelligently grouped. In general, there's nothing wrong with, I've got too much stuff here, okay? And I'm not going to put it all on one dashboard. People want to get details of this thing, they can click, and I'll take them to a sub-dashboard. Jack Price is asking, when working with teams that only want to recreate Excel spreadsheets in Tableau, what is the best way to convince them that there's a better way to see the data, even when they're adamant they just want the raw data? Welcome to my life and everyone else that's attending this thing. I can't tell you hey, just do it the same way, and it's usually the highlight table that will get them over that hurdle. You're still giving them the numbers, and they're going, oh, it's much easier to see. And then when you build that bar chart around the sides, and they can see the big bars and the small bars, they start to see it. The other thing is, let's look at that thing where we had the 12 months of data, and which was the highest and which was the lowest, but in which months did that not happen? Show them how much easier it is to answer the questions they want to know with the line chart. Or say, hey, I can build you a toggle. You can go back and forth. Here's this, and you press this button, and it can show you the underlying data. I think over time, they'll be less interested in the raw data, because they'll be more comfortable with the line charts, the bar charts that you're giving them that are providing much more useful answers. But prepare to have a wall that you'll be banging your head against for a while. All right, what else do I have here? Just trying to look through more of the questions that are here. And I'll take 1 or 2 more. I've been trying to go through all these things, and I've had a colleague who has helped try to triage them. So this is more a technical question on about Tableau. It's coming from Carla. How do you make a dashboard that is pulling from millions of rows of data and keep it fast and dynamic? The data from the dashboard is mostly calculated fields, which I believe slows down the dashboard. I have seen hundreds of millions of rows with calculated fields, and there's a whole, if it's not loading quickly or responding quickly, there are a bunch of knowledge base articles for addressing this, which is why is this dashboard slow and what can you do about it? And but I have found for the most part, which is if I connect to the data and then create an extract using Tableau's hyper engine, I get ridiculously good performance from this. Marcella is asking, what charts would you recommend for financial data, such as showing changes in volumes and revenues across hospitals? Interesting. I'm looking into this. There's someone I want whose work two people whose work I'd like you to look up. One is Klaus Schulte. He is a Tableau Zen master, and he is a professor of accounting out of Munster, Germany. And he is on a quest to get more people in the financial sector to embrace data visualization. Financial areas seem to be way behind others. The other is Dorian Banatau. He's from Romania. Both of them do ridiculously good work around data visualization in financial. And Judy Eckert is asking, and this will be the last question that I take. My apologies that I wasn't able to get to everything. Do you have any more examples of how to show why using averages obscures the point? Certainly the salary data. There is a wonderful cartoon, and I recently retweeted it because I got permission to include it in the new book. It comes from Ben Orlin, who wrote a terrific book called Math with Bad Drawings. And it's, so just look up Math with Bad Drawings and Average Salary and Ben Orlin. Or you can follow me on Twitter, and you'll find it reasonably quickly. And it nails, I mean just hysterically nails the how averages can really obscure what's going on. Terrific question. These were great. I'm sorry I can't get to them all. What a lively and engaging bunch of people. Later this week, I will be doing something called Chart Chat. We're having an open discussion with three of my colleagues and kind of debating data visualization. We may have been looking at that P&L sheet from Klaus Schulte, to which I was alluding. So you can go to datarevelations.com and look up Chart Chat. Amanda McCulloch, Andy Cotgreave, who's Chief Technical Evangelist at Tableau, and Jeffrey Schaefer, fellow Zen Master and co-author of the book, The Big Book of Dashboards, will be jamming with me. So, folks, this has been great. I know a recording will be available, and I will try to make a PDF of a large part of the presentation available as well. And thanks so much for your time and attention, and hope to meet some of you in person when we can all meet in person again.